All right, we're going to give you a look at what's happening on the back pages. We're going to start with the Irish Independent this morning, where it's a tale of two tens. This is reflections on last night's game between Croatia and Argentina, and you can see the contrasting emotions here between Luka Modric, the evergreen Luka Modric, and the green with envy, Lionel Messi here. Modric pulls the strings as Croatia push Messi towards the brink of World Cup exit. They need other results to go their way now, Argentina, if they're going to stay in. And I mean, they're kind of sticking the joint out, so there's no suggestion that they even could turn around this thing on their own. Schmidt to decide on Ireland's future by the end of the year. Another interesting story that's across a lot of the sports pages this morning, that it seems as if he's going to see the November internationals out, and then after that we'll make a call on whether or not he's going to sign up a new agreement that will take him beyond World Cup 2019 or not. There had been some indication from David Nucifora, who's been in front of the media this week, saying that Nucifora's quoted here saying that Joe Schmidt could very well surprise us all at the last minute and say that he wants to stay on for another term. Which to me kind of suggests that the indications are that he isn't going to hang around after 11 or 12 years or whatever it is spent away from his native New Zealand, that maybe he fancies a return home. We'll get to that in a little while. Armagh seek 11th hour reprieve for 9 under-20s is the other interesting story that grabbed our attention here. Owen from the Irish Independent, Colin Keys writing about this. Was the, I'm sure if you paid any attention to the mass brawl that would have appeared up in your social media timeline at some point over the last couple of weeks, it was Armagh and Tyrone. It was, I think, the end of the game, and it was pretty much all in at that stage. 10 Armagh players were suspended arising out of that. One of them, on appeal, had their suspension overturned, and so this is ahead of the final against Derry on Sunday, which is a curtain raiser to the senior final that we'll talk about a bit later on. But yeah, no fewer than 9 Armagh players that Chairman Mickey Savage is trying to get off the hook here. The thing is that we don't know exactly, it's 9 players, so what sort of role. You can probably assume that there are varying degrees of roles played in this. Whether any of them should be playing, of course, really is the question.
Yeah, well, a question that should be answered with the answer no, most probably. That Armagh should have probably, and Tyrone should have been thrown out of this competition as soon as this brawl happened. Like we spoke yesterday about the neck of the Australian Rugby Union for potentially trying to scoop for Joe Schmidt. Well, if they've got a brass neck, well, this is, I don't know what is the next step up from brass, probably iron or steel. That's the sort of neck that the Armagh County Board are showing here by even suggesting that any of those players should get off the hook. Sure, it's very hard to pin down exactly who was involved, who are the people who should have been suspended. But as you say, having only 10 of their players suspended instead of the entire 30-man panel and all the selectors banned for the rest of that tournament, they should feel very, very lucky that that's not the case. Yeah. Absolutely, it is just, it's showing an utter disdain for due process and for the kind of almost the good of the game to even just. I don't know that it is,
right? I actually think that from an Armagh point of view, you're at the point almost there of critical mass where the playing numbers that you almost have left at that stage. It is slightly different than underage. I'm sure there's a bank of players that you can call on that might not necessarily have been involved, but I mean, it is, in terms of your season's planning, it is almost the point of critical mass to remove 10 players from any squad. Leaves you really with just the bare bones. So
that's irrelevant.
Well, probably not to them. I mean, I understand your point, and to a large degree I agree with your point. I'm just saying from their point of view, it's probably a very different dynamic where the manager's like, listen, we're screwed here. Like, we literally have no players left. 10 of them, 9 of them are gone. That wipes out my entire team here. Let's give this a bash. I mean, it's a shot to nothing, probably.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure was the raw violence that was displayed against Tyrone, which was absolutely horrifying.
I'd agree, right? But so they haven't been. So that maybe they should have been kicked out, but they haven't been. So they're still in. So it's like, well, we're here. So if there's a possibility these players are going to come, we can get these players to be available. Let's give it a bash.
But it's kind of this whole attitude of, oh, we can go out and have a big brawl and it'll all be fine in the end. We'll get it sorted. We'll twist a few arms. We'll knock on a few doors, have a few conversations behind closed doors subsequently, and everything will be fine in the end. Don't worry about it, lads. Go out there. It's only a bit of a brawl. There's going to be no consequences. This is the consequence of what happens. And like, personally, like, these are people who are teenagers. They've made a they regret what's happened, no doubt. The majority of them regret what's happened, but ultimately there has to be consequences for this. And who else are you going to make an example of? An example has to be set in this because we see this too often.
You're suggesting self-responsibility, though, and like in a sporting context is generally more often than not absolutely absent.
Yeah, it is exactly. So, like, what else is going to happen then? I mean, I'm not saying that this is going to be the next step towards gaining some sort of self-responsibility from an Armagh perspective, because, as you say, that'll never happen. Everybody will think that they're whiter than white, and that's naturally going to be the case in any circumstance that has such visceral emotions attached to it. But ultimately, there needs to be some sort of learning from this, and it is that a full pitch brawl where the fighting lasts for 30 to 60 seconds and a prolonged attacks on one another just isn't acceptable. Like, you can't just turn around then and say, listen, is it actually okay if some of those players who are involved with that actually
I agree, but unless they were turfed out entirely, I think they're more likely going to chase that.
Maybe Ulster GA made a balls of it by not turfing them out entirely. Yeah. Maybe they have, and maybe some blame lies with them. Yeah. But maybe as well, they thought that this is kind of a suitable middle ground. It's like, these are only under 20s.
Do you think it's Joe Brolly on the case? Like, I mean, some sort of legal loophole here to sort of get them out of it, because ultimately that's what happens with these things frequently, that it's nothing to do with the actual offence that happened. It's like, oh, you didn't properly report that thing, so...
Well, I would say he would likely be on the case, except for the fact that they're playing Derry at the weekend. Now, surely, as much as Joe Brolly loves to prove the boardroom and suits wrong, I don't think he would betray his county in such a manner.
Well, let's see. The Irish Examiner front page this morning there, that is a shot of Joe Schmidt from the press conference yesterday. December deadline, Schmidt to decide Ireland future by the year's end is written pretty extensively in that newspaper today. So I think it's we're sort of in the unusual position with Joe Schmidt that we're all sort of hoping he hangs around, because he's doing such a stellar job. Like, we get very sort of bogged down in the little bits of conversations. Like, interestingly enough, we've had such an amount of conversations about Sean Cronin and what the hell is happening with Sean Cronin, and the fact that he's clearly not in Joe Schmidt's World Cup plans, of course, then before he pulls him right back in. But it's been rare in my lifetime that a manager of a national team has had such a swathe of public opinion behind him. I mean, he's winning, and that's sort of the be-all and end-all. But everybody wants him to hang around for a significant period of time.
Naturally, like, what was the clamour like for Jack Charlton to stay on? Say, let's take post-Italia 90, even post-94 to a certain extent. That's the only kind of comparable situation here, because this is unprecedented success. Yeah,
there is a bit of revisionism, and it's hard to put yourself back in... that far back to remember exactly, but there is a bit of revisionism, obviously, about the style of football that Jack would have played, and there was obviously some dissenting voices, one very loud dissenting voice about the style of play that we were playing. Like, while it was a success in the context of where Irish football had come from, like, this is actual success. Like, it's...
And it feels like there is a trajectory here that keeps on growing and growing and growing, whereas to a certain extent with Jack, once you got through the summit of Italia 90, it felt there was a stagnation there. It felt that there was a regression there at times, even going forward to 94. So I think that's the main thing with Joe Schmidt at this point. It's like, he not only has helped us to achieve some of the greatest success we've seen in national sport, he is our best chance at climbing a mountain that we will never climb again, which is potentially making it to a World Cup final.
And nobody gives a shit about whether we're playing conservative rugby and...
But he's improved on that front as well. Yeah. In fairness, the discourse has changed. For like, look at the game last weekend. That was mental in the first half. Like, of course, Joe Schmidt wouldn't have liked that. He will probably try and rein things in, and I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow is a crap game from a neutral perspective. But ultimately, he has made, maybe not like conscious efforts to improve the style of play, but he's certainly made a conscious effort for Ireland to be more free scoring, and that has naturally led for the neutral to enjoy Ireland a little bit more.
You work with what you have, Eoin, as a former Ireland...
Work with what you have, and when somebody like Jacob Stockdale arrives on the scene, and when Bundy Aki becomes available, you make the most of that, and that has naturally helped him.
A former Ireland manager once used those words to me in the toilet of a pub after a game that they should have won and didn't quite manage to get it over the line.
Well, that could be any... You really haven't narrowed that down one bit.
He didn't know who I was, and I was like, oh, wow, God, you've really just thrown your players under the bus there. The Times Ireland edition there, Schmidt will decide future at Christmas. Is that story we've been talking about? That's the UK version that you can see there. Sterling could miss physical Panama test because there is some leaked team news coming out of the England camp. Gareth Southgate's limp arm, the one that's sort of a bit dodgy. I don't know, has he got...
Well, it wasn't Southgate.
I know it wasn't, but look at you, sort of run with the one. I don't totally get that. Why have you got to ruin the story on me?
Well, just for accuracy's sake.
Screw accuracy. Anyway, it seems like there's going to be a couple of... You've ruined that entire piece for me, but that's fine, don't worry about it. World Cup misery for Messi is the other one here. And one of the other interesting stories here, Galway Fury at referees Mayo links. So this is a story by Brendan Foley here in the Times Ireland edition. Stephen Glennon, the Galway manager, says Connacht Ladies Gaelic Football Association's decision to appoint a former Mayo coach as a referee for the county's provincial final clash doesn't align with the spirit of the game. I mean, I admire Stephen Glennon's restraint and his choice of words there, because he really could have gone and said much more than that. So it's the Connacht Senior Football Final. It's Galway against Mayo, and the Connacht Association have decided that they're going to appoint somebody from Mayo who is a former minor Mayo coach who has jumped over the border to Roscommon, so flies the Roscommon flag to all intents and purposes. But like, this is an outrageous appointment. Yeah,
there's good detail from Kevin Egan and Owen Cormac in the Irish Examiner as well today. Jerry Carmody is the referee in question. Not that it's his fault at all. He's completely absent to blame here in the situation. He's been given a game. He's
only that you could say, listen, lads, you know I've got these ties. Maybe it'd be better if I sit this one out, because it's a hiding to nothing for everyone.
He refs under the Roscommon jurisdiction at this point, so they are looking at that and they say, right, we're going to take a Roscommon ref to ref Galway versus Mayo. Despite the fact that a lot of people, I presume, in the Connacht Council would have known that he was the minor coach to Mayo in 2012 and 2013. A lot of those players will be playing for Mayo at the weekend. And the worst thing about this is that an appeal has been lodged, and the Galway County Board have tried to do this all behind closed doors, hence the level of restraint we're seeing here. And they didn't want to bring this to the media whatsoever. The only thing is Connacht threw out that appeal and said, no, it's okay, we are going to proceed with the original appointment of Jerry Carmody as referee for this game. And here we are. They've decided that it's time to go to the media with it, and now we're talking about it. Now it's been printed in a lot of the national newspapers this morning. I would not be surprised if Jerry Carmody is still reffing that match on Sunday. If it's already gone through one appeals process, then the only reason it would change now is if Connacht Council say, well, we look kind of bad because everybody's talking about this now.
Well, or somebody with some sensibility stands, somebody with some authority and sensibility stands in and goes, lads, this is absolute bullshit. That's not happening. We're changing that referee. Sorry, I'm sure you would have been fine, but we'll get you another game again down the track. You might understand why we need to replace you. Like, I'm sure the referee in question would probably say, look, that's absolutely legit.
I think so,
I thought it was a bit weird myself, to be honest with you, but let's crack on, you know.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think it's not a matter of Carmody being under the microscope here a little bit. I don't think it's really... Maybe he could have said, listen...
I think he could have done. I think he legitimately could have said, listen, I have fairly strong ties here to that county. Like, I was thinking about the JP Doyle comparison, the rugby referee who would have definitely taken on... I think he's taken Ireland tests. Definitely, like the Ireland tests, I think... I mean, maybe that's fair enough. So he's from Dublin, I think, and... operates under the RFU banner now to all intents and purposes, and did the Munster Racing game this year. I actually remember looking at that game thinking this was unfair on Munster. Like that Munster should have lodged some sort of complaint that a referee from Dublin was looking after one of their games in Europe, that, you know, maybe he might have been more inclined to give Racing the edge but he's refereed Ireland games, I think, before and stuff as well. But, I mean, I don't know, rugby's such a, you know, cleansed sport, you know, that people are such, you know, go at things with such goodwill. And
well, do you know what, I'm going to take that ball and run with it. That is why Munster lost to Racing in the Champions Cup this year, because of a Dublin referee being appointed. It's an absolute outrage. And actually, sorry, no, you brought it up after the fact, Adrian, so you can't talk about it. You can't bring up facts about Munster that happened.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Oof. I mean, it's probably an anti-Munster thing.
You needed to talk about it at the time.
Yeah, because, yeah. We want to say good morning to David and Kandu, who's watching from Zambia this morning.
Good morning, Zambia.
To David particularly, and if you're somewhere in the world, I mean, we've got lots of thumbs ups and smiley faces and whatever else here, but like if you want to make an actual comment, and we'll give you a bit of our own thumbs up this morning if you want to get in touch with us on Facebook or YouTube or on Twitter, any of that good stuff. The Irish Times this morning, they've got a full sports section this morning that you can buy. There's not a huge amount, there's not a lot of pages in it, which kind of surprised me given that the monster weekend of sport that is in it. But there we go. It's led with Keith Duggan from Nizhny Novgorod, who reflects on that game last night between Argentina. I think editors last night went, can we get a picture of Messi looking pretty glum, and let's just put that on the front page because it seems to sell newspapers. So there we go. Shadow of Kosovo hangs over Swiss tie with Serbia, writes Nick Ames in Moscow. Meanwhile, that's ahead of Serbia, Switzerland, tonight. That's a 7 o'clock start. I'm disappointed that that's those games are the games I'm getting to see much more than others.
Same with everybody, to be honest.
Like Serbia, Switzerland is like...
It's the footballing equivalent of two bar brawlers punching each other in the face repetitively. That's what Serbia, Switzerland is going to be. Their only goal so far
okay with
from
that
set
really,
pieces.
like
it's just like Alexander Kolarov against Granit Xhaka. Even their names sound like Yugoslavian and very tough and very 1980s. And they're going to rip each other's heads off, and whoever remains with their head intact at the end of the game shall win that game.
You make it sound like it's something that I actually want to watch now. But
there you go. I'm a hype man.
And just finally, the Racing Post this morning: Le Boeuf 5-2 for Cup at Glory. Denmark expected to join France in the last 16.
The front page of the Herald Sports section is World of Messi Misery. Argentina on verge of elimination from Russia as Croatia hammering takes fate out of hands. We've got a couple of other columns here, Brent Pope, Conor McKeown and Kieran Whelan. Just to mention this one briefly, he says that Laois have the skills to rattle Dublin. So I don't want to hear anybody accusing Kerry pundits of being the only pundits who try and play up opposition chances when clearly Kerry are going to hockey them, because that's exactly what Kieran Whelan is doing this morning when it comes to Laois in Dublin. So how can Laois beat Dublin? According to Kieran Whelan, firstly, they arrive at the final on merit. So, Laois deserve to be there. That is one of the reasons why they stand a chance against Dublin. I thought they were very disciplined against Carlow and didn't allow Carlow to dictate the terms of engagement. Again, another reason why Laois might have a chance of actually beating Dublin. Then this one, there's a lot of caveats in this. If they can get some sort of platform around the middle third, something that is easier said than done against the rejuvenated Michael Darragh Macaulay and the brilliant Brian Fenton, then the likes of Donny Kingston, Ross Munnelly and Paul Kingston could pose problems for the Dublin defence. Let's just reiterate that. If they get some kind of platform around the middle third, aka can they beat two of the greatest midfielders we've got in the game right now, and then they might have a chance of winning. And then another caveat and a final point: Dublin's defence could well be tested far more than it was against both Wicklow and Longford, and Laois could well look to play some long early ball to test that particular area. They could, or Johnny Cooper and Philly McMahon and a sweeping Keane O'Sullivan could be in there to clean up ball, and that ball may never see the full forward line for the majority of the game. Basically, if Laois play one of the greatest football games we've ever seen and Dublin choke, then we might have a close game.
It's like, do you know what? It's a game not even worthy of preview.
Well, we've previewed it there, so...
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not worth writing about. It's not worth talking about. It's not worth showing. The game is going to be a demolition. It'll be the old sort of Westmeath thing of, do you put 15 men behind the ball and try and protect it, or do you try and play a bit of football? It's reason A as to why provincial championships should have a bullet put in them.
What about Donegal for Manor? What if a shock happens there? Is that a reason to take the
that would be one of the... I'm in agreement with you that if Fermanagh do win that, and they would be, I think, one of the last teams in the country to actually, who are still to win a championship, maybe themselves in Wicklow, if that's right.
I think, yeah.
That would be partly a reason. Although if we could get Fermanagh to win one, and then we get Wicklow to win one, and then just call it all off and start the competition afresh.
Yeah, so it'll be the year 3000 or something.
I mean, I appreciate that point too with Wicklow, yeah.
No, you're right. In the main, it is going to be. It's probably going to be a grim weekend for provincial finals. Like that being said, it's not being like I'm not getting involved in cute tourism here, but there could be an event at Páirc Uí Chaoimh this weekend. I'm just saying there could be an event. By
the way, the only thing I heard from that Kieran Whelan piece that you mentioned there was Kerry are going to hockey Cork.
I didn't say that.
That was. I mean, we'll rewind the tape now, but that was.
I literally didn't say that because it's not an honestly held belief. On the back page of the Mirror, it's Fred Devil, £52 million midfielder.
Say Cork won't make the Super 8, so you know.
Well, I did say that, but that's a different matter entirely.
Well, Kerry going to hockey Cork was the cliff notes that I got out of it. Go ahead, no, it's fine, go on.
Your cliff notes are inaccurate. Maybe journalism isn't your thing. £52 million midfielder insists he's joined the biggest club in the world after signing a 5-year deal. Yeah, Fred joining Manchester United yesterday. Ireland reshuffle excites Joe, and Rory roars back. So he obviously missed the halfway cut last weekend, But Rory's going pretty well, actually. He's finished with a 6 under par 64. Birdies on 13, 14, 15. Padraig Harrington also in the top 10 after a particularly strong start. So this is a point where Rory plays well over the next couple of weeks. He starts to find his form and is like, you know what, I'm pretty happy with my game. And then Carnoustie happens and it's just like there's a 10 mile per hour gust and it's like, screw the course and screw the conditions. I'll get my game back eventually. On the back page of the Irish Daily Star, it is messed up. Lionel and Co. on brink of a shock early World Cup exit. And it's Fred the Red as well there. On the back page of the Sun then this morning, it is Willy Plonker, Colossal Caballero cock-up. It's Argentina 0, Croatia 3.
Willy Plonker.
Yeah.
Willy Wonka, is it?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay.
Exactly. Well, like...
That took a minute to...
it doesn't really require any more comment, does it? It's... on the back page
of... considering giving it some extra comment anyway, but...
There's nothing more I can add to it. On the back page of The Guardian, it's Rashford all set to take Sterling's place as the strikers penciled in. And Messi for Argentina, Caballero's clangor puts World Cup hopes on a knife edge. And then finally, the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is going with events at Royal Ascot. There's Frankie Dettori, Golden Frankie. Dettori wins Gold Cup to claim his 60th Royal Ascot victory. And Prodigal Son returns. Cipriani recalled to England after 10 years. That'll be an interesting subplot to their third test against South Africa. Of course, it's already a losing cause.
Yeah. I do kind of feel that it's... I mean, it is, but obviously desperate times and all that sort of stuff call for desperate measures. I'm kind of interested to see how he gets on. And, I mean, maybe Sean Cronin is in the same kind of last chance saloon type territory, potentially from a Joe Schmidt point of view. Like, this is remarkably only his 10th start. You know, his 64th cap, maybe, something like that, and his 10th start. Kind of incredible. So maybe there's the same sort of thing at play for both of them. Keep your comments coming in. We're going to get to those in just a moment. We're going to